Villains are the lifeblood of a good D&D, or Pathfinder, or Shadowrun, or Call of Cthulhu game. You got a good villain, you probably got a good game. Bad villain, maybe a bad game. So today we're going to be discussing 10 things that all good villains should have. Number 1, a good villain is compelling. Almost all of our points in this video that follow are going to support this first point. But here are a couple quick things that contribute to compelling villains. The villain and their minions are entertaining and or memorable. Now, how you make them entertaining and how you make them memorable is up to you. It might be how you roleplay them at the game table through what they do and what they say. It might be because they have a really cool stat block and that fight with them is amazing. They might do some dastardly deed that will be burned in your player's memories forever. Like not inappropriate, but within the confines of what you want to have in your role-playing game, obviously. The details are up to you, the game master, to put into your villain, but they should be entertaining and they should be memorable. Also, a good villain is a villain that the characters want to stop. Maybe it's personal, or maybe their plot is just so awful that the characters are driven to bring it to an end by their plot. Like the bad thing that they want to do is just hideous, and your players are like, yeah, we gotta stop them. That's bad, don't let that happen. Number 2, good villains have foreshadowing and mystery. When I was running my Sword Coast Guard campaign, for instance, I was constantly foreshadowing a future confrontation with this Lord Paxton. They were running into villains, lieutenants of Lord Paxton. They were running into his minions, and they were always hearing about Lord Paxton, and they were fighting powerful people that worked for Lord Paxton. So there was this foreshadowing that was leading up to him. Also, Lord Paxton himself was a mystery. My players didn't know who or what he was exactly until practically the very end of the campaign. You see, foreshadowing increases drama. When the players know something is coming, something horrible and hideous or powerful or something that's unknown and they're not sure what it is, this builds anticipation, that suspense, and that drama that you probably want to have in your game. If the players know everything about a villain or what the villain can do, it takes a lot of the fun out of the game. There is amazing fun in the unknown because, again, suspense, drama, anticipation. All right, let's think about it for a second. Why do people hate movie spoilers or sports game spoilers? It's because spoilers ruin the experience. It tells you in a few brief moments what happened or who won the game. And then all of that fun, that entertaining part of not knowing what's going to happen is stolen away from you. And then it's like, well, what's the point of watching the movie now or even watching the game? I already know how it turns out. A good villain may have a hidden identity that surprises the characters. Perhaps someone they've considered a joke before, or they've met before in an earlier adventure, or even someone they consider an ally. And a good villain always has some ability or knowledge that surprises the characters. A great villain should never be completely predictable. Like, even if my players had managed to find out some stuff about Lord Paxton, they don't know everything about him, and when they go into that final fight, he's gonna be doing stuff that they didn't anticipate, that they couldn't have known about. Number 3, good villains have a motivation and goal. Lord Paxton wanted to establish New Osoria, the giant kingdom come again. To that end, he was gathering vassals and forcibly conquering those who would not submit. He didn't just want to pillage and destroy, he wanted to build a kingdom. As far as his motivation for doing that goes, he was basically a demigod of storm giants, and it rankled him that Osoria had fallen in the conflict with the dragons eons ago. For pride and glory, he wanted to bring it back. After all, giants are superior to all other races. So to not have a kingdom that reflects that is wrong. It's immoral. You see, villains should have something they are trying to accomplish, and they should have something that motivates them to do the thing. This drives the story and the narrative, but it also gives verisimilitude to your world. Bad guys usually aren't just bad for kicks. They have reasons. Bad guys often don't view themselves as the bad guys. And finally, to the end of accomplishing their goal, A good villain has a good plan, or at least an interesting one. So flesh out what that plan is, and design how that plan is going to be implemented over the course of your game, your campaign. By the way, folks, there's only about 1 week left to back our Kickstarter, The Secret Art of Game Mastery. Backers will get 3 books that will help take some of the mystery out of being a game master and help you run amazing games for your players. The first book, The Secret Art of Game Mastery, contains over 100 years of combined game master experience from me and my team to help you improve your own game mastering. Book 2, The Secret Art of Preparation, contains templates and guidance that will help you create and flesh out your own campaign and adventures. And then Book 3, The Secret Art of Note-Taking, has templates and suggestions to help you keep a Game Master session journal that will make your games even better. These are in fact the things I use in my own games to help me deliver an amazing experience to my players. So if you don't want to miss out on all these goodies, you can click that link down below to learn more and back the project. Number 4, good villains are heroes themselves. Lord Paxton did not see himself as the villain. No, he was doing the virtuous thing by establishing New Osoria and ushering in a new reign of peace in the region. Once those who opposed him had been submitted and put underneath his feet, of course. You see, a good villain is the hero of their own story. They never think of themselves as the villain. Something that makes evil so attractive is that it can easily be twisted to appear good. Furthermore, a good villain has layers. They're not one note, but they have multiple dimensions that can make them more realistic. For instance, Lord Paxton ruthlessly crushed and subjugated those who opposed him, but those who joined him had generous benefits and prosperity. Number 5, good villains are good leaders. Whether by charisma, intelligence, or fear, a good villain is a good leader. And why? Because almost all good villains have cronies. And to get cronies, you need to be a good leader. It is a rare thing to find a villain who is a villain all by himself and has no helpers, no minions, nothing, just one bad guy all by himself. It happens, but it's rare. Lord Paxton, for instance, had tons of cronies working for him, creatures that had sworn to him as vassals. He even had an ancient white dragon working for him. This worked for creating mystery. How does a dragon work for him? And suspense. Eventually, they're gonna need to fight that dragon, right? In fact, I introduced that white dragon to my players when they were like level 5 or so. It was a level that they had no chance of fighting and defeating that dragon. But they knew going forward that that dragon worked for Lord Paxton, and eventually they're probably gonna have to do something about that. You see, lieutenants and mooks working for the villain show the villain's power and influence, and they give the players a place to start in the campaign. I mean, you gotta clean up the lower tiers as you level up, and you work your way up to taking on the big bad of the entire campaign at the end of the campaign. And as the characters are doing this, it allows the game master to reveal lore and other tidbits about what's going on, the villain's ambitions, the lore behind things, small information about the big bad, what their weaknesses might be, what their strengths could be, what they can do in combat, the spells they might know. More suspense, drama, and anticipation. By the way, if you're finding this information useful, please give me a thumbs up and share this video with others. One of the best ways you can help other game masters is by sharing helpful content. Number 6, good villains challenge characters and players. First, a villain should be powerful and represent a threat. Lord Paxton was no joke, and the final fight with him was challenging. Villains that are pushovers and are easily defeated are anticlimactic. A few years ago in my Hand of Light group, the players were taking on Githyankis, and they got to the final fight, which was with a Githyanki knight, and they killed him in one round due to Divine Smite. And Ben, the player whose paladin had Divine Smited twice and maybe got a crit on one of them, and killed that Githyanki knight, that villain, in just one round, the player himself said, "That's it." And you see, it was disappointing for him. Even though he personally dispatched the knight, the villain, in one round, it was disappointing. Because it was so easy, there was no effort, there was no challenge to it. Because when there is no challenge, a victory feels empty. It's like a participation trophy, which just suck and are insulting, honestly. And even if, for whatever reason, your villain is weak in and of themselves, they should have leadership qualities or something that allow their cronies, their minions, to be powerful. Any way you slice it, the villain should be a challenge, whether it's a physical challenge, an intellectual challenge, or a challenge via puppets that they are in control of, whatever. Furthermore, a good villain doesn't just threaten the heroes themselves, but something the heroes care about, the village, the world, or perhaps an NPC that they've come to love. A double or triple threat is always better than the villain that just exists to threaten the characters themselves. But they should certainly threaten the characters too. However, all of that said, a good villain also has weaknesses that the characters can learn about and exploit. And yet, more than just being powerful or challenging them in that respect, a good villain makes the players think. They challenge the players' expectations or beliefs. They may even make the players wonder if the villain actually has a good reason for what they're doing. The best villains aren't entirely wrong. They're the bad guys, and they should ultimately be the bad guys, but some aspect of their plan should make sense. Some of the best villains are even redeemed in the end, but this should be used sparingly. Most villains should need to be defeated. Number 7, good villains introduce conflict. In my example with Lord Paxton, his vassals, which included orcs and other creatures, were threatening the local region. And any city or community that wouldn't join Lord Paxton was being conquered and subjugated and made to follow him in the end. Lord Paxton was creating war and conflict in the region. Every good villain does. Like, create conflict of some sort. I mean, what is Dungeons and Dragons or any other tabletop RPG if there is no conflict? What are the players going to do? Start an inn? Become a blacksmith? Like, the job of the game master is to create conflict in the game that intersects with the characters. And villains are the medium through which game masters do this. Any movie worth a dang has conflict. Maybe not physical combat conflict, but there is some sort of conflict. Plays, books, all the same. Any story, any narrative that anyone has ever cared about has conflict of some sort. Your D&D game must be the same. Number 8, good villains are active. Think about it this way. A good villain would be doing whatever they're doing even if the player characters didn't exist. Unless a villain is specifically tied to a character's background or previous events of the campaign, which are both very legitimate things to have in your games, the villain should be doing bad things even before the heroes get involved. Furthermore, a good villain shouldn't just be sitting there in their lair waiting to be stopped. They should be actively working to fulfill their plans and stop those who are interfering with them. For instance, when my players started interfering with Lord Paxton's plans, he started sending hit squads against them. And he did other things in response to the character's actions in that game. He did not just sit there statically waiting for the characters to defeat him and come to him. Number 9, good villains are intelligent or cunning. If you want to create a compelling campaign, adventure, and narrative that maintains verisimilitude and doesn't get plot holes punched in it by your players, it usually works best to have either intelligent or cunning villains. At least for the big bad, like the lieutenants and mooks might be dumb lugs, but the big guy calling the shots should have either the IQ or the wisdom to justify the narrative that the campaign is weaving. Of course, they could just be big brutes that are so powerful that nobody can oppose them and people follow them in fear. That's certainly a possibility. Number 10. Well, I don't actually have a number 10. You let me know what your number 10 is down in the comments. How do you make good villains in your games? And don't forget to check out our Kickstarter, The Secret Art of Game Mastery, at the link below. There's only about 1 week left to back. Okay, so now you know how to make awesome villains, but have you ever wondered how to tell if your game is any good or if it just plain sucks? If so, click right here to learn the warning signs of a bad D&D game. And until next time, happy game mastering.